All right, I think we're good. This is a new system, so I think hopefully it works. All right, so this is pretty cool. This is the first nutrition challenge that we've really done since we opened Strongside, and I have not done a presentation like this in a long time. So if I mess up, you might not ever know. But so we're going to talk about kind of like what we're trying to do with the nutrition challenge and why we call it like a nutrition challenge over a paleo challenge or like a weight loss challenge or anything like that. So there's a couple goals of the competition. Excuse me, I have really bad eyesight. Goal number one is we're going to learn how to live a healthy lifestyle, because that's really what we're trying to do over anything else. Rather than lose weight, gain weight, look like a bodybuilder, look like a marathon runner, win the CrossFit Games, doesn't matter. We're setting a goal of I want to do this long term, just like we talk about with your fitness. We don't want to set a short term goal and say, okay, I want to do this and then I'm done. I want to snatch my body weight and then never work out again. We always want this infinite level so I can keep going. And same deal with your nutrition. And it takes a good bit of strategy to make that happen. Learn how to reach your goal of lose weight, gain weight, whatever you're trying to do. Nutrition gets really confusing, and it's almost like a religion of whatever you believe. It's so embedded in you that you'll fight that to the end, regardless of if it's correct, incorrect, whatever. And it gets really confusing. People think they need to change everything to lose weight or everything to gain weight, or because their goals might be different, that they should do a completely different nutrition program than somebody else. And that's not really necessary. I mean, it doesn't have to be completely different based on what your goals are. And we want to make nutrition fun and less stressful. You'll notice a lot of people build up a lot of resentment with nutrition. A lot of people enter it, stay on it for a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months, and then, I can't do it. And it's usually their fault. They usually think that it's, I don't have the willpower to do that, I can't muscle through it, just wasn't for me, whatever it is. Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, paleo, doesn't matter, it just didn't work for me, I don't like it, couldn't do it. Or we put it on a pedestal and it's so unattainable that we get too stressed out and we're like, I can't do it. Like a lot of people do that with paleo. And that's kind of like we've gotten off that name of paleo, because paleo is cool, but it's so limiting, and which is fine. I mean, it's not like it's not correct, but it's so limiting. A lot of people feel like they can't do it because all they hear all the time is, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't have that, I can't have that. Like, what in the world can I have? So the first thing we want to talk about is, I call it the skinny on obesity. So like, what's the down low of obesity? And I feel like at some degree, everybody has a goal of I want to lose fat, or at least burn fat, whatever it is. I don't care if you want to lose 50 pounds, then obviously, yeah, your goal is you want to lose fat. If your goal is that you want to see your abs, well, you're going to have to lose fat to do that, because there's fat covering your abdomen, and that's why you want to see it. And no matter what your goal is, your goal, whether you know it or not, is to burn fat. Whether it's for a short duration or long duration, your body's most efficient energy system is fat. So we know that straight off the bat, regardless of whatever you believe is correct or incorrect with nutrition, your goal is to burn fat. But what happens a lot of times is everybody has their own goals. They're kind of like, I want to do this, I want to do whatever. And then there's this whole like thing on obesity. Everybody's like, where are we going with it? I don't know. Everybody's got a different nutrition philosophy. So what we really want to do is bring to light how prevalent this issue is. And the last part of this will really make you understand what we're trying to do with it. But as far as obesity goes, America currently spends $250 billion a year on managing obesity and obesity-related illnesses. And a lot of people look at that and they go, first off, what in the world does that have to do with me? And then we'll talk about that in a second. And then they look at that and they go, well, I've never had $280 billion in my bank account, so I have no idea what that even means. I can't wrap my head around it. Well, to give you an example, let's look at Starbucks. Starbucks obviously provides health care for their employees, just like most companies. And Starbucks spends more each year paying for their employees' health care and managing disease than they spend on coffee. And Starbucks only uses the top 3 coffee beans in the world. And that's not just Starbucks, that's a lot of other companies, but they're spending more on managing their employees' disease from obesity-related illnesses than they are actually buying the product that makes them money. And then we can look at something called fatty liver disease. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but basically you have alcoholic fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Alcoholic fatty liver obviously comes from alcohol, it's in the name. So we we know alcohol's bad. Like, you don't really have to know anything about nutrition to say, I probably shouldn't be drinking this. And it promotes a lot of fat, and it promotes a lot of fat on the liver. And around the liver, it builds up a bunch of storage of fat. And with that storage of fat, then we go, well, we have to do something with it. And if it gets so severe, then we have to do a liver transplant. And that's for an alcoholic fatty liver. But you can get the same thing from not even drinking alcohol. If you have a very high carbohydrate, grain, or sugar consumption diet, then you get what's called a non-alcoholic fatty liver. So a bunch of fat surrounds the liver, not allowing it to metabolize nutrients the way it needs to, and it slows down, and you have to get a liver transplant. Well, the study came out 2 years ago, and it was at 8 years, and we've done absolutely nothing since then, so we're down to 6 years. So it's estimated that in the next 6 years, we will be doing more liver transplants for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease than we currently have livers for. So you'll have people dying in hospitals because they can't get liver transplants for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which next to type 2 diabetes is one of the highest prevention diseases that we can fight because it's all nutrition related. Most people, 98% of people, get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease not from a genetic predisposition, but from a diet-related issue. So at the beginning of this, I said, a lot of people enter this like the skinny on obesity, or they hear that $280 billion a year, and they go, what in the world does that have to do with me? I'm sitting in the audience right now, and I'm not even overweight. Like, what does that have to do with it? The final key point on this is, what are we creating? And that's the big picture here. A lot of this is through epigenetics. And we're not going to talk about epigenetics today, but epigenetics is what you pass on generation to generation. Like, why are people currently at a higher risk for cancer or diabetes, and they weren't thousands of years ago? Blue eyes were only estimated to come about 10,000 years ago. So on and so forth. What over time in our genes is making this happen? And your genes, or your DNA, is only made up of amino acids, and amino acids make up grams of protein. They can totally be taken in and out, and they can be messed with and all that stuff. So that's a whole nother conversation. But really, you have to look at what are you creating over time. And the more sick we are, and the more that we just pass it up, is the more that we affect over and over and over again. And you guys heard me talk about like CrossFit and stuff in the sense of that. It's funny when you talk about it with like, Rich Froning now in 20 years might make it to the games. Like, what are we creating? Rich Froning's at the top now, but in 20 years, everybody's going to squat 500, and everybody's going to run a 4-minute mile. Like those elite athletes that every now and then one of them is doing it, it'll just be the norm in 20 years. So we have to look at this and we say, okay, this is our current state with ourselves, but what are we passing on to our children? What genetic predispositions or characteristic traits are we passing on over time? And that's where that really comes into play. So it's not trying to scare you, it's just trying to make you aware of how big the epidemic and crisis really is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to debunk a bunch of myths. So we're going to go over 3 of the big myths, because my goal at the end of this is to empower you, most likely on the hormone section. It's going to empower you with all the correct decisions of everything that you need to do to reach your goal. And I'm assuming that since you're in the audience, I don't have to sell you on the fact that you don't need a bunch of sugar or grains or lean cuisines in your diet in order to lose weight. So I'm assuming that. If I need to sell you on that, then let me know. But what typically happens is we enter it, but we still have these ideas of what we need to do to lose weight. And I keep saying lose weight, but it's all going to be relevant in a second of lose weight, gain weight. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do. I just commonly say lose weight because that's 80% of the people most likely entered this with, I want to lose a little bit of weight. But there's usually 3 fallback things that people look at, and they go, I want to get fit, I want to get healthy, I want to get blank. And it's usually filled with, I'm going to do one of these 3 nutrition things. Just like if somebody says, hey, I want to get fit, they usually don't pick up a barbell and start doing snatches. They probably go walk on a treadmill. So there's things that people turn to. And with nutrition, the first one is calories in versus calories out. So these 3 things we're going to go through are very essential to make sure that we're all on the same page when we start, or else going forward when we start talking about hormones or talk about dieting and meal planning and all that stuff, you're going to go, this makes no sense to me because I didn't understand the core fundamentals. It's kind of like learning how to do a hollow body before you do a pull-up. You got to learn those full fundamentals first. So calories in versus calories out. You might be sitting in the audience right now and go, man, I've been with this guy a long time. I've heard him talk about it a lot. I totally don't believe calories in versus calories out. But at some degree, you either believe in calories in versus calories out, or most likely at some point in your life you have. And I'm definitely one of them. I mean, most of you guys know I weigh less now than when I was 13. That's what got my weight loss journey started and all that stuff. And I was totally, yeah, man, it makes sense on paper. If I eat less and exercise more, I'll lose weight because it's a math equation. And then done. So even if you are the Guinness Book of World Record calorie counter, I don't know if that's a thing, but it could be. Even if at that level, there is no way that, first off, that would even be manageable to say, I mean, to measure your resting metabolic rate, we would have to bring you in and measure how much oxygen you're taking in, the carbon dioxide you're putting out, hook you up to a machine to do that. We can do that. There's a company called New Leaf that does that. We can do it, and then we have to measure that. And we just measure you at rest for 10 to 15 minutes. So first off, that's not even a full 24-hour span. You're going to hear me talk for about an hour. You're going to burn 60 to 90 calories just sitting there. So I hope that there's like a little Excel sheet at home or something like that you're monitoring that in. You're going to need to wear a heart rate monitor every single time you work out and measure all the calories burned. Every time you drink a glass of cold water, that's going to be 7 to 14 calories for your metabolism to speed up to manage that. And the list goes on and on and on. And you would have to write down every single thing that you eat. You would have to make sure that 1-to-1 ratio, exactly what you're burning is coming in. I mean, look, like, doesn't that stress you out? Like the amount of stuff that you have to do to manage that. So first off, we know that most likely can't even happen. Then when we look at it and we say, well, okay, I get that I might not be able to manage it exactly, but what if I do it around? Like if I say I ate 2,000 calories-ish and I burned 2,500-ish. Well, let's talk about it for a second. So first off, a lot of this was developed through the law of thermodynamics. And two scientists over in Europe in 1864 came up with this. And there's 3 laws to the law of thermodynamics. And the second law is what really gets applied to weight loss. It gets applied to weight loss, but when it was discovered, it had nothing to do with weight loss. And it was based on energy transfer. And basically what they did is they studied heat, and they said, all right, this room is really hot. And then the room got really cold. Why did it get really cold? Well, it got cold because hot air left. Cold air didn't come in. So they did a study on a cup of coffee, and they said, all right, if the coffee sits out and over time the coffee gets colder, and I don't put any ice cubes in it or anything, what happened? The heat left. You saw the steam leave the coffee, right? You didn't put ice cubes in to make the coffee colder, just hot air left. So that's the law of thermodynamics. And then somehow in the 1920s that got turned into weight loss and said that if we expend more energy than we take in, then we'll lose weight. Because a calorie is a form of heat, so that's how they could make that argument. But it's not really addressing the overall issue. Because what you would be saying is you would be saying that anybody in this room that is bigger or smaller than somebody else, or somebody that doesn't weigh what they want to weigh, is a complete lazy sloth that sits around all day eating and never gets off the couch. And first off, we know that's not true because you all train with us. So we know that there is at least some type of handstand, backflip craziness going on 4 to 5 days a week. And I'm fairly confident that you're not all going home and sabotaging yourself every single day with cookies and cakes and ice cream and all that. So we know that can't really be true. And then we can take it a step further. You can research all these studies going back to isolated areas where there would be obese populations. But even in current day state, if we have a third world country or a rural area where we know there's no amount of high income, because we can make the argument with high income. You got more money, you can probably buy more food, you can probably eat a whole lot more. But if I have a low income area where there's an overweight mother and an underweight child, the law of thermodynamics would be saying that the mother is starving her child so she can eat, which we know isn't true. If we look at WIC, which is a government-funded program of women, infants, and children, we look at it and we say, all right, they supply food or somewhat discount food for low-income families. The average person on WIC eats 800 calories less per day than the average person not on WIC. The average person on WIC weighs 25 pounds more than the average person that's not on WIC. So you're eating less and exercising more. So that whole eat less, exercise more, it doesn't really give us the full story. Really kind of what it's saying is if I said, hey guys, come check out this room. This room is crowded. It's full of people. And you walked in, you were like, wow, this room is crowded. Oh my goodness. Why is it so crowded? Well, it's actually crowded because more people came in than left. You'd be like, what? Yeah, duh. Like, of course more people came in than left. So at some degree, I'm not saying that it's not about any degree of calories. If you go home and eat nonstop and you attempt to gain weight and you order pizza every day and ice cream for breakfast, yeah, there's probably a psychological issue that we need to talk about that's making you gain weight, but I seriously doubt that that's the problem. And to label it of calories in versus calories out isn't really telling me, it's not really telling me the whole story. There's an underlying issue of hormones that we're going to go into next. And then your hormones really have everything to do with it. So we're going to talk about your hormones and how to manage your hormones, because whatever you feel, whatever is happening to your body is going to be hormone related. And we can manage a lot of that to reach your goal of whatever we're trying to do. And as long as we're talking about calories and fat tissue and stuff, when it was first discovered in 1924, so insulin was first discovered in 1924, and sex hormones and growth hormones were founded right after. But around that time, there was a really interesting study where they figured out how to do grafts, like skin grafts. And there was a burn victim that burned the back of her hand. And I guess I should say beforehand, you have this thing called lipophilic or lipophilia, where your body loves to accumulate fat. And we're gonna talk about that. But it's basically saying, like, I can eat 800 calories a day, I can eat very little, and I'm storing a bunch of fat. More cells are lipophilic on your body than others. Like, we all have that midsection problem, right? Those cells are lipophilic. They love to accumulate fat. Maybe your opinion, whether you have a fat forehead or not, but you really don't have a fat forehead. Nobody's forehead gains a lot of fat, right? Like, your belly is going to store more fat than your forehead. So these fat tissue would be more lipophilic than these. So that's that story. Well, the burn victim takes on the back of her hand, or burns her hand and gets a skin graft from her hip to the back of her hand. 20 years later, she becomes obese, and only the back of her hand starts storing fat, because these fat cells that transferred were still able to get the hormone signal of storing fat. So everything's really hormone related, and that matters way more than how many calories you eat, or it overtakes any amount of willpower that you thought you had. Your hormones will take over everything. Point number 2 is that fat makes you fat. We get that all the time. Because again, that makes sense on paper, right? People freak out when I tell them to eat more fat. But your body requires fat to work. So first off, let's stem off cholesterol for a second. Like, we're not really here today to talk a lot about cholesterol. We got some really good videos out about it. But let's look at the simple argument of cholesterol. Everybody says that cholesterol should be taken out of your diet and you should eat less cholesterol and all that. Okay. Well, cholesterol is actually made in your liver, and it's used in every cell in your body. If you didn't have cholesterol, you would die instantly, and your body would never make something that killed itself. So for anybody to say you have to take cholesterol out of your diet doesn't really make any sense, because you're making it right now while you're sitting here. So, like, there's a lot of arguments like that get really popular because, I don't know, maybe you want to sell more egg whites or whatever. But as far as fat makes you fat, it's not going to make you overweight because your body uses it so much. So number 1, let's look at your nerves. Every nerve in your body is coated with a myelin sheath, and it allows those nerves to work. It's completely made of fat. Your brain is 70% fat. Every cell in your body requires fat to work. And you can use fat for a really good amount of energy. But the trick is that your body will only burn what you feed it. So if you feed it a bunch of carbohydrates, it's going to burn a bunch of carbohydrates. That's where we start getting into that lipophilic or lipophilia. And the problem is you didn't join this competition saying, man, I want to lose 10 pounds of carbs. If I could lose 10 pounds of carbohydrates, I would be so happy. No, you probably said I want to lose 10 pounds of fat, or whatever that number was, or I want to feel better, I want to do whatever. And you're going to have to, in its simplest form, you're going to have to feed your body fat in order to burn fat. It will not magically start burning fat when you're feeding it cereals and pastas and grains or whatever. It's just going to burn that for energy. You're going to wind up getting hungry every 2 or 3 hours. You're going to start bonking in the middle of the workouts. You're going to crave a bunch of sugar. Your body's going to crave whatever you feed it. And if you're eating cereals and pastas and bagels and granola and all that, that's why every 2 hours you're like, man, I want some of this. I want some of this. And it becomes an addiction. It's kind of like if I put a banana and an avocado in front of you and said, which one do you want? You want the banana. Well, why? Because there's 30 grams of sugar in a banana. That's why you want a banana. So you got to feed your body fat in order for it to burn it. And then point 3, more work equals weight loss. That is not true at all. I see it all the time. You really used to see it when I used to work on like corporate gyms and stuff. Like we can control what we do in this gym setting, but when I used to work for like bigger gyms and stuff, and people just pay for the membership and they come in, all they did was cardio. And I would see thousands of people every day do cardio, every single day, be in the gym for 3 hours and never look any different. And you don't have to work harder in order to lose weight. A lot of people take steroids because they think they're going to get bigger, faster, stronger. They take steroids so they can recover more and get bigger, faster, stronger. And I'm not telling you to take steroids. What I'm saying is that we need to focus on how much we're recovering and how much are we taking care of our body versus how much we're beating it up. You can work out an hour a day for 4 days a week, which is what most of you guys do. And that's less than 3% of your entire week. So we need to look at those other 2 points and say, am I feeding my body enough? Am I resting my body enough? Am I feeding it the right types of foods? Am I sleeping enough? And am I literally taking care of my body? Because that's 97%. The other 3% is that I'm going to go really hard in the gym time. That's never going to add up. There's no way that you can do 3% of work and expect to get an A. That's like doing a horrible project and wondering why you got a D on it. So, like we talked about, the 3 big myths: calories in versus calories out, fat makes you fat, and more work equals more weight loss. We got to understand those really well to move forward. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that it's, whether you believe me or not, I'm going to try to make you a believer, but whether you believe me or not, calories in versus calories out won't work for the masses. Not only physically, but psychologically, it'll set you up for a lot of failures. Fat doesn't make you fat. If you do not feed your body fat, you are not giving it the nutrients that it needs to survive. And then working harder does not mean that you're going to lose more weight. Absolutely not. Most of the time, people work harder and they put their body in a stressed out state and they bonk and they don't work out for 3 weeks. All right, so now we need to talk about like the top tips. So what are we going to do? Because the first slide, I kind of told you that basically we're all dying and we're dying fast. And then the second slide, I just told you everything that you thought you knew was wrong. So now we're like, oh crap, what am I going to do? So tip number 1, first off, eat when you're hungry, eat till you're full. So that's one thing that I want to make sure that we get through here. So it is a nutrition challenge. And I don't care if you want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger when this thing's done, or you want to look like Jennifer Aniston. Doesn't matter to me. But at any degree, you need to eat when you're hungry and eat till you're full. This is not a hunger pain, I'm going to starve myself to fit in my skinny jeans challenge, because that won't work either. Because outside of the physiological effects, there's a whole psychological thing that's going to happen too. And nutrition can really mess some people up psychologically, and it can get really confusing. So just eat when you're hungry, eat till you're full. That has to happen. Assuming you're eating the right types of foods, being hungry will overwhelm anything else. You will not even be able to function. You will start resenting the diet. You have to eat. Number 2 is eat real food. So a lot that sounds simple, but what I'm saying is that anything you can hunt and gather. I love paleo. I think it's great. It does have a lot of restrictions and all that, but at the end of the day, you need to think of yourself as hunter or gatherer. I know Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, has a really good saying: eat meat, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. So if you can stick to that, not that you need to remember that, there's no quiz, but if you can hunt and gather your food, you should probably eat it. Now, I'm not telling you to go outside and kill some squirrels and go home and cook them, but what I'm saying is that if you cannot hunt and gather Oreos, lean cuisines, fruit roll-ups, yogurt, ice cream, you couldn't do that. And those are extreme examples. But let's talk about a little bit more realistic example. What part of the chicken is the nugget? That's what we're talking about. Are you eating real food, or are you eating the idea of food? And I'm not, I was given a presentation at this high school Thursday, and they brought up a really good point. They were like, what do you think about like hormones in the chicken and all that stuff? And here's the deal. I work in 2 phases. Number 1, what I would suggest doing is for this first 30 days, if we're already spinning your mind and you have no idea how this is going to work in your life, step number 1 is eat real food. I don't care what it is. If you have to eat grilled chicken nuggets from a fast food restaurant 3 days a week and then go buy some Bubba burgers and just eat them without the bun, I don't care. It's just real food. That's step 1. And then let's say you spend 30, 45, 60 days and you get this down and you're starting to enjoy those green leafy vegetables and you're starting to put fruit 1 serving a day in your diet and you're starting to go, you know what, I got some control now, I'm feeling good, then we'll start talking about organic, non-processed food, because it's a big emotional strain and financial strain for people if we say, hey, let's go home, clean everything out of your pantry, go triple your grocery bill, and oh, what, you don't like it? Suck it up. I mean, there's got to be a step process. So I work in 2 steps is what I typically get people to do. So when we say eat real food, I'm fine with if you go to the grocery store and you just avoid quality. I don't care. But what I mean by that is anything you can hunt and gather. So you really need to think about that. Can I hunt and gather my bacon, sausage, eggs, chicken, fish, avocados, nuts, seeds, sweet potatoes, any of that stuff? Am I cooking with oils like coconut oil and stuff because I can hunt and gather a coconut? Am I using sea salt because I can hunt and gather that over table salt? So, I mean, anything you can hunt and gather. But then you have to take it a step further and go, all right, if I was in nature, could I make yogurt or milk? No, because I would have to tame livestock, and then I would have to get it to a point where I could milk it. I can't just walk up to a cow and start milking it. And we can take that through several arguments, but really the simplest thing is what it does to your hormones. So we're going to talk about a hormone called insulin in a second, and the drastic effects that dairy has on insulin. And I know that freaks a lot of people out with dairy. We'll talk about some tricks that we can do with dairy. If you're like, that's a deal breaker for me, I got to have my cheese or whatever, that's cool. But I would rather you do that rather than like bread. So you'll notice bread, for example, grains, pastas, you can't hunt and gather that stuff. You're going to have to get some stuff, mix it up. I mean, it's like a drug, right? It's like to create bread, it's like creating a meth lab. And sugar follows the same biochemical pathways as cocaine. Sugar can't get metabolized in your body. It goes the same way as cocaine, which creates the addiction in your brain. There's a really good book called Grain Brain, and it talks about how after the obesity epidemic in the next 30 years, there'll be an Alzheimer's epidemic because of what the grains do to your brain and how it deteriorates them over time. That's a whole other subject. I'm really just saying eat real food. For this 30 days, I don't care if it's in a bag. I don't care if it's organic or not, because we'll get you to that point. But usually we don't see a lot of success with it because people go to the grocery store for the first time and freak out. So if you can hunt and gather it and you look at it and you go, man, I could find these vegetables, I could find these meats, I could find these nuts, seeds, fruit, everything, that's what you're going to eat, rather than it has this many calories or something. Don't count calories and don't set a weight loss or weight gain goal, which I believe the next point is set a performance goal. So here's the deal. Don't count calories because that's going to stress you out. You're going to hate everything about this. You're going to hate everything about the challenge. You're going to start hating everything about your life. You're going to start thinking you're a bad person. I mean, it will mess you up, like counting calories bad. And then don't set a weight loss goal or weight gain goal because that's completely out of your control. Because what you're doing is you're coming in the gym and whether you realize it or not, you have a goal of lifting some external load. You might want to lose 50 pounds right now, but you also want to squat your body weight. And you also want to do 150 wall balls without stopping. And you also want to run a 6-minute mile. You know, there's little goals that you have throughout this thing, and you're like, well, how am I going to add load externally, like squatting something or putting something over my head, but I have this massive goal of losing 50 pounds? So you're already doing stuff that kind of headbutts. Not in the sense of it's going to keep you from reaching your goal, but just logically, we're going, how are we going to make that happen? So set a performance goal. Because if you set a weight loss goal or weight gain goal, you're now going to set yourself to a standard that's not really in your control, that also has a big effect of making you feel like a loser. And you don't want to do that. If you say, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds, every time you get on the scale and you haven't lost 20 pounds, you feel like you let yourself down, like it was your fault, like you didn't do a good job. Every time you want 18-inch biceps and they're not 18 inches, oh man, that was your fault. You didn't do enough, whatever, to reach your goal. And that's not true, but that's what we think about. Because I'll tell you right now, you will never weigh what you want to weigh, and you will never look the way you want to look. And if we start setting those as goals, we're already dooming for failure. Because the second you reach your weight loss goal, you're going to set another one. Because it's just not good enough. If I could just have my calves, you start getting weird. If I could just have my eyebrows look a little different. If I could have my calves look a little, I mean, it gets so insane of what we set goals for. And that's only natural. I mean, that's human nature, is we chase a golden nugget and we want to keep going with it. But it's also really defeating. Rather than if we say, you know what, we've done Fran like 5 times, and man, I'm at 5:15 on Fran. I want to get sub 5 minutes. And we start chasing that. Oh man, there's so much more we can win at that area. And if somebody says, like, think of it this way, Fran, 21:15.9, thrusters and pull-ups. This is aggressive, but let's say your goal was to do it in under 4 minutes. That's really aggressive, right? What if you came in the gym every day and said, I'm going to make Fran in under 4 minutes? When you got Fran in under 4 minutes, you'd be like, yes, I got it. Holy cow, where'd these come from? I mean, like, you have to be a very serious athlete to do Fran in 4 minutes. Well, you might say, well, okay, I'm still working on 14 minutes. But whatever degree that is, you might say a pull-up, a handstand push-up. I want to squat my body weight, whatever that is. You have to go through some serious adaptation changes. You have to come into the gym and work really hard, and you have to dial in your nutrition and performance to be able to do that. So if you say, I want to get 10 handstand push-ups, I want to get 1, I want to do this, you have to do stuff to win along the way. So if I want to do my first handstand push-up, I got to get my first handstand. Then I have to get my first handstand push-up on 3 ab mats, and then 2 ab mats, and then 1. And then I won like 5 times doing that. I feel so much better. My self-esteem is a lot higher rather than, oh, didn't lose my weight again. And then at the end of that, what have you accomplished? So if you say you want to lose 20 pounds, first off, you can't lose 20 pounds and go tell everybody about it without everybody kind of looking at you a little weird. Like, all right. But if you talk about a handstand push-up or you talk about something performance-related, it's just human nature. We're more likely to congratulate you, whether that's you or somebody that you don't know. Like when you really think about it, if you walk up to your buddy and you go, hey, dude, I lost 20 pounds, they might be happy, but you can't really integrate that in a conversation to get that conversation started, at least within us, rather than a performance goal of, I just snatched my body weight or something like that. It's setting you up for so much more success. All right, now here's the big one. Manage your hormones. This is everything that you need to do to reach your goals in this one slide, right? $1 billion information right here. We can affect this and we can change it to reach whatever our goal is, as long as we're following the guidelines of the 2 previous slides. As long as we're not getting wrapped up in calories, as long as we're not worried about our fat consumption, as long as we're not trying to kill ourselves in the gym without proper recovery, as long as we're not focusing on this number, because those are all psychological things that won't allow your body to change, because you'll get so psychologically wrapped up in it that you won't be able to reach your goal. So here's the deal. There's this horrible hormone called insulin. And it does some good stuff. All right, what it does is when you eat and stuff gets broken down to blood sugar. Every time you eat, it doesn't matter what you eat, it gets broken down to blood sugar and goes into your bloodstream. Insulin gets secreted from your pancreas, meaning your pancreas shoots it out, and it manages blood sugar to keep you from going into a diabetic coma. So thanks, insulin. That's it. And then after that's done, then that's all it needs to do. A little of it can store inside the muscle cells, but after that, its job is done. However, the standard American diet is 65 to 75% carbohydrates, which means that way more insulin gets produced than needs to. So all this insulin that's floating in your body is called hyperinsulinemia. All it does is store fat. Insulin is the director of fat storage on your body. So we talked about 1924 insulin was founded. They knew all the way back in 1924 that insulin made you store fat. That's all it does. When there's extra insulin inside the bloodstream, after the blood sugar has been managed, it starts grabbing fat and storing it inside your cells. So if we want to manage fat, increase or decrease in fat, we have to manage insulin or other sex hormones like testosterone or estrogen or epinephrine, norepinephrine, anything. We don't have to go that deep. But insulin, if it's really high, you're going to store a bunch of fat. If it's really low, you're not going to store any fat. It's really that simple. And then we could talk about like type 1 diabetics, insulin dependent, type 2 diabetics, insulin resistant, and they play their own game, but that's a different conversation. This is really just about fat storage. So, secreted from the pancreas to manage blood sugar, and it's the director of fat storage on your body. It only gets elevated with sugar. That's the only thing that raises it. You can eat as much protein as you want, and your insulin levels won't go up. I mean, minutely, the amount that they're supposed to manage the blood sugar. Excess protein is not going to create excess insulin to store body fat. Same thing with fat. There's no sugar in fat. Excess fat, it's just going to excrete enough to manage the blood sugar. There's not going to be a screaming amount inside your bloodstream to allow you to store fat. So we spent most of this time talking about weight loss, but some people don't want to lose weight, so let's talk about this. If I want to lose fat, obviously I've got to keep my insulin levels low. If I want to gain muscle mass, I'm going to need to consume a larger amount of protein and fat to do that. Some bodybuilders go up to a 60% fat diet because fat can get broken down into protein over time rather than carbohydrates cannot. So regardless of whatever my goal is, keeping insulin levels low by not taking in high amounts of grains, sugars, starch is going to keep insulin low and I'm not going to store fat. Insulin also inhibits the body's ability to produce what's called myostatin, which is the hormone that tells your body to produce muscle. If you take a steroid stops the production of myostatin, so you're allowed to make as much muscle as you want. You can just get traps to your ears and get this big. But insulin keeps that from happening. So let's say I have a goal of I want to gain 20 pounds of muscle. I just want to be just chest out to here and be huge. I don't care what your goal is. But if you produce a bunch of insulin, so even if you eat very low calories, maybe you're one of those gifted people that can eat 10,000 calories a day and never gain a pound. The more insulin you have, the less ability you have to build muscle mass. It stops your body from producing muscle mass. And then what happens is if you want to lose weight and you're eating a bunch of foods, regardless of the amount of calories that you eat, it tells your body to store insulin. So store fat. I referred to that regardless of how many calories you eat. Everybody knows somebody who's been on Weight Watchers, right? I mean, that's how I did it. That's how I lost like 45 pounds on Weight Watchers when I was 13. That's how I got my jump start. So, I get it. But everybody knows somebody who's been on Weight Watchers, and everybody knows somebody who's been on Weight Watchers again. And everybody knows somebody who's been on Weight Watchers again. Same thing with Jenny Craig, whatever. If it's a calorie-based diet, typically what they're doing is they're selling their own food. And typically what they're doing is they're pumping it full of carbohydrates to allow you to feel full, to spike your blood sugar up, eat a little bit of calories, feel super full. Oh man, I can get through the next couple hours, and I'm going to market it as you need to eat every 2 or 3 hours. So then you go back and you eat again and you manage your blood sugar. You can eat a very low amount of calories. So at some degree, yeah, you'll lose weight, you'll lose some weight in your arms, whatever. But most people are going to lose it all. It's still going to be here. It might even get bigger, and then it's going to stay small around the legs. Whatever degree. Whether it's this big, doesn't matter. Whether it's this way, doesn't matter. You're most likely going to store a lot of fat in your midsection from insulin, regardless of the amount of calories you eat. I don't care how many calories you eat, 800 calories, 8,000 calories. It doesn't matter. The last thing I'll say on that, because I'm trying to put a bunch of examples in your head, look at bodybuilders. I'm not saying that bodybuilding is king or that you should train to be a bodybuilder. But what I am saying is they eat about 10,000 calories a day and they have 2 to 4% body fat at showtime. So what? I mean, I think I eat a lot and I eat about 3,000 calories a day. And they have less body fat than I do and they're larger than I am. Type of calories you're taking in, what do they do to your hormones? They're not eating a bunch of sugars, grains, starches. They're weighing and measuring their food, but they're also eating food that you can hunt and gather. That way they don't elevate any hormones that tells them to store fat. They're eating way more than you and have less body fat than you. Really everybody. 2% is very unhealthy. I'm not saying you should have 2% body fat. Okay. And the next one is cortisol. Most people at some degree have heard of insulin before because you might have known somebody with diabetes or you just heard about it and stuff. That's what really gets brought up. But then there's cortisol. So cortisol is good and bad. Cortisol is released from these things called adrenal glands. You don't need to remember this and just give them some validity behind it. They sit right on top of your kidneys. They look like little triangles and they're called adrenal glands. They pump out cortisol. And that's your energy. So if you drink coffee, every 100 milligrams of coffee raises cortisol 20%. And that's why you feel great. And that's why if you're tired, you take in more shots of espresso because you want to get your cortisol higher. And then when you're not that tired, you want just like 1 cup of coffee and you're good. But you don't think of it that way, but that's what's happening. More caffeine, more cortisol, I feel great. It's also your fight or flight hormone. At some point, maybe you guys have heard about that. Fight or flight, we're talking like thousands of years ago. This was the stressor hormone that would go off when you would be in a famine or specifically running from a tiger. So if you were running from a saber-toothed tiger, what in the world happened? Well, most likely this cortisol was released. That way you could manage your blood pressure and you wouldn't pass out from being scared. You could turn on all fat burning storage so you could get that for energy. You would store a bunch of fat in your midsection. That way you could make it through the next famine. And you could essentially lift a little bit more. Cortisol is produced every time you exercise. So I don't want you to think that it's bad. Right now you're not pumping that much cortisol through your bloodstream, but if you got up and started doing some burpees and you started stimulating activity, cortisol will start getting raised so you can have that energy to do that. So at that degree, it's not that bad. But what typically happens is we are some stressed out people. I mean, we are not sleeping. You know, we're the only land mammal that gets up in the morning and sprints all day without a nap, and then we try to get some sort of crappy toss and turn sleep at night. I'm waking up 15 times, and I'm waking up to go to the bathroom, and then I have no energy in the morning, so I'm going to stack myself full of 17 cups of coffee and sugar to make it through the day, and then I'm going to die in the middle of the day. Oh, more coffee, keep going. I mean, we do some weird stuff, and then we work all day long, kids, school, whatever. We are stressed out all the time. So with that stress and with that cortisol production causes a whole bunch of downsides. You know, there's all these effects of like blood pressure and all that, but we're not really here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about like fat, and it makes you really fat, and it stores all right here and all right here. It stores a lot through here, and through here, all based on cortisol. And if we can keep cortisol levels lower, then we can typically store a little bit less fat. You also feel fantastic because you're not stressed through the roof. Fight or flight stimulates fat storage. Okay. And then, just to retouch on the two, we're going to talk about one more hormone. Insulin is going to tell your body to store fat. Cortisol is going to tell your body to store fat. Insulin is going to be raised through carbohydrates and sugar, and cortisol is going to be raised through stress. And we're going to try to manage those. And then the last thing I'm going to send you, let's see, I already sent you a video on insulin, and I believe I sent you a video on leptin and ghrelin, but that's the last of the hormones we're going to try to manage through here. So you have two hormones that control your hunger, leptin and ghrelin. Ghrelin is produced from your stomach wall and says that you're hungry. So if you're hungry right now, and you're like, when's this thing going to be over because I'm starving, ready to go eat some not grains, and then that's ghrelin. And then when you eat and you feel full, that's leptin. Leptin is produced from your fat cells, and it goes to your brain and tells you that you're full. And that's how they're supposed to work, but they're not working. They're not working at all. Average American, they don't talk to each other. So let's talk about that. Like now, you're like, well, my hormones aren't working. What does that mean? So here's the deal. If they were working, you could eat and feel full off a normal amount. And most people go, well, what are you talking about? I eat and I feel full all the time. I'm full right now. All right, well, how come you can eat a 500-calorie sandwich and you can drink 500 calories of Coca-Cola, but you couldn't eat two 500-calorie sandwiches? Thanksgiving's coming up. The average caloric intake on Thanksgiving Day is 6,000 calories. The average American gains 12 pounds from Thanksgiving to New Year's. When was the last time you were ever full on cake and ice cream? Have you ever eaten 5 Tostito chips and gone, man, I am stuffed. Like, that just got me. No, because sugar doesn't allow those hormones to communicate. So it snaps that signal off. So it makes no sense that if a calorie is a calorie, so going back to slide 1, if it's all about calories, how come I'm more full off a sandwich rather than I'm more full off a Coca-Cola? If same amount of calories, I can drink 1,100 calories of Coca-Cola, I can go to Quick Trip and get an extra large slushie, whatever, and I'm not full. But if I were to have half that in a protein bar, I'd be full. It doesn't make any sense. Well, when you take in sugar, it doesn't allow those hormones to communicate with each other. Whether that's on a single basis, like when you eat per meal, or whether it's on a long-term basis. Maybe you've eaten so much sugar, so much grains. Average American takes in 150 pounds of sugar per person per year. So maybe you've taken in, and just to put that in relevance, South Africa, 32 pounds of sugar per person per year. So just to put that in a little bit relevance there. So you take that in over time, your hormones don't work. But the cool thing about this is leptin and ghrelin only take 3 to 5 days to start communicating again. So here's what's going to happen. Hopefully, you're going to get done with this and you go, man, the fire was lit inside of me. That great speaker got me just ready to go. And I'm going to go and I'm not going to make these crazy drastic changes like we talked about. Like I'm not going to go home and clean my pantry out and all that. But you know what? One thing I can definitely start doing is I'm going to cut out the grains. No more bread. I can handle that. I'm a strong-willed person. And it is a drug, and you're going to start craving it. And 3 to 5 days, you're going to crave it really bad. You can eat more. You can say, you know what? I'm going to cut out these breads, but I'm going to start eating 4 eggs with breakfast instead of 2. And then I'm going to have a protein shake. I'm going to snack on nuts and seeds. I'm going to get a Perfect Bar from Whole Foods or Costco or something. And I'm going to eat more, but because I have this absence of grains and starch, my signals are going to go, whoa, buddy, where's that drug? Where's that sugar? Well, like we talked about, follows the same biochemical pathways as cocaine. So it's going to create that addiction. Our goal is not to make you hungry. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but the goal is not to make you hungry. If you're hungry, you eat and eat more. But you're going to notice that these leptin and ghrelin hormones are not really going to communicate with each other very well for the first 3 to 5, maybe even 7 days, depending on how severe it is. The second that you cheat, it makes it that much worse. Hey, me and Megan cheat every couple weeks. Like, we don't have like a set, like I encourage people, if you're going to have a cheat meal, cheat. You know, it's because it'll drive you insane. I don't think we have like a set day. It's just kind of like, hey, we haven't cheated in like 2 weeks and I really want some pizza. We're going to eat. I'm not saying that like you shouldn't ever do it. What I'm saying is that if you fight, and then make it through and you're like, man, I feel good on day 9 and then you cheat, you're almost right back to it. So give it a little bit more time before you start dabbling into cheat meals, and because you will revert back to it. So that leptin and ghrelin takes 3 to 5 days to manage. I did send that video out. I have a video on leptin and ghrelin and how it works. Watch that video. It's only like 5 or 6 minutes long. But it talks about how to manage those hormones, because that's really going to manage your hunger more than anything else. You're going to eat more. Whatever your goal is, lose weight or gain weight, you're going to want to eat more. And you have to be able to manage your hormones to do that. So it's really 4 hormones, but the 3 sets of hormones we're trying to manage. Insulin. If I raise insulin, I'm going to store fat. If I raise insulin, I'm going to inhibit my body's ability to gain muscle mass. I'm going to raise insulin through starch, through grains, through sugar. We talked about how we're going to talk about milk again. Lactose does not raise your blood sugar very high, so it kind of gets away with a lot. A lot of people push it to the side because it doesn't raise your blood sugar very high. Lactose actually elevates insulin higher than grains. So that's why we kind of steer away from that dairy, regardless of the whole Paleolithic thing and milking cows and all that. You know, I get that, okay. But at the end of the day, I can go testing in a lab right now. You take in milk, insulin goes higher than if you eat a sandwich. So we're really trying to steer away from that. If you're like, dude, that's a no-go, I love my cheese, higher fat. Higher fat milk will keep your insulin levels low. Skim milk elevates insulin higher than whole milk. Fat keeps insulin levels low. So if I have a salad with cheese but I put an avocado on it, I got a bunch of fat from that avocado, I'm going to keep my insulin levels lower. That way there's no insulin spike. Same deal with gaining muscle mass. If I want to add a lot of muscle mass, if I'm getting most of my carbohydrates from grains and pastas, muscles aren't going to get as big. Again, look at that bodybuilder. Not saying that you want to try to be a bodybuilder, but I am saying that they're not eating sandwiches. Maybe like in the off season to bulk up a little bit, but they're not eating a bunch of sandwiches and grains and pastas and all that, and it's the same volume of calories, but they're still keeping insulin levels low because they're eating fats and proteins, nuts and seeds. So that's a good question we get a lot. I'm actually glad you said that, because one thing that I haven't said yet is I don't want you to think that you are on a no carbohydrate diet. Like, that is not what we're trying to get across here at all. You're going to eat plenty of carbohydrates. You're going to eat a bunch. You're probably going to eat 30 to 40% of your diet from carbohydrates. You're just not going to eat a bunch of junk. So if you want to eat rice like once a week or on occasion, or, you know, everybody's body's different. That's one reason we call it like a nutrition challenge. Like, Megan can respond really well to some food before a workout before I can respond really well to food for a workout. I like not eating about 2 to 2.5 hours before the workout. Nothing to do with any scientific research that's ever been shown. I just feel like doo-doo, and I don't like doing that. So everybody's going to respond a little different. You might say, you know what, I come to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I notice that I am bonked at the end of the day. I really need some rice or something like that. And we'll talk about rice in a second. But you're going to make these changes throughout it to allow your body to perform well. If you make any nutrition changes that drop your performance, we're doing something wrong. We do not want to exit anything. We see that a lot. A lot of people will go paleo or they go on a nutrition challenge and they cut so much stuff from their diet that they can't perform and they drop down a little bit in performance. So performance should be your gauge of am I getting bigger, faster, stronger, or not necessarily bigger, but leaner or faster, stronger, I'm performing better, I can lift more. As far as why they eat rice, because it's a carbohydrate that's not going to fill them with grains or gluten. I would recommend white rice over brown rice. Brown rice still has molecules in it that simulate gluten, but that white rice would be a little bit better for you. There's not really, like when you think good carbs and bad carbs, there's not really a difference. What you're measuring is the amount of sugar that's in it. So, you know, white bread versus whole grain bread. One slice of bread raises your insulin the same amount as 2 tablespoons of sugar. So I don't care what color it is. All I got to do is change the molecule to make that happen. You really want to find food on an insulin index, which I can send out to you guys. But you'll notice some foods don't elevate your insulin as high as other foods. So carbohydrates, I mean, I guess you could label it good and bad, but carbohydrates that raise your insulin level really high, such as breads or pastas or grains or food with a bunch of sugar in them, that's going to be your quote-unquote bad carbohydrate. A good carbohydrate, and I'm even putting corn in that category too, but a quote-unquote good carbohydrate is going to be a carbohydrate that does not raise your insulin levels very high. Most likely something green and leafy, most likely some plant or vegetable. And as far as potatoes go, I recommend sweet potatoes for their nutrient content. I don't really care if you eat a sweet potato or a white potato. It's not really going to have that much effect on your insulin levels, and psychologically, it's not going to mess you up freaking out if you eat a white potato or a baked potato because you think you just ruined your whole diet. I don't really care. It's still going to load up your muscles full of carbohydrates. It's going to be good. I'd rather you have that way over some waffles or something, but you could go a sweet potato just for its nutrient content. All right, and then there are 3 deal breakers. So I think there's only one more slide after this, and then we can go through some questions. But so the first part, we tried to kind of like debunk everything. And I'm going to recap all this. I'm going to send this video out to you guys. I got a bunch of stuff. I'm really just trying to pique your interest and raise your questions to go, you know what? I think we're onto something here. This is really groundbreaking material. NASA should pick this up. But hopefully just raise a bunch of questions and get you going, and then get a concept across. We're not trying to give you do this, 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 and this because you'll fail. If I give you the first 3 years when I started becoming a trainer and like all the nutrition aspect of it, the first 2 or 3 years, it was meal plan everything. Meal plan, count this, weigh that. And I was like, dude, everybody is not losing weight. Like, it's not working. So what I don't want to do is limit you to a box. I want to convey a concept, and then you use that concept to move forward with it and say, okay, hunt and gather. Got it. Boom. Insulin, low. Got it. Boom. I don't need anything that raises insulin like carbs, grain, I shouldn't say carbs, but grains, dairy, sugar, whatever. Boom. Got it. I can eat some starch, a little fruit, no sugar, so on and so forth. But convey concepts. But there's really 3 big deal breakers with the challenge that you want to do. Number 1 is you want to write down your goals. So there are 3 sections, assuming you printed it out, 3 sections to write down your goals. I want you to write it down. You're 20% more likely to reach your goal if you write it down. Whether it's now, in your iPhone, whatever you want to do, you write down what you want to achieve in this 30 days. Make it specific and make it attainable. If you lose 50 pounds, we are putting you on a billboard right now. We're going to start selling this thing all over the country because it's probably not going to happen. No, just because it's 30 days. Like, that's not going to... I'm saying in the 30 days, you might have some long-term, but what do you want to do? Do you want to commit to 30 days of no grains? Do you want to commit to 30 days of whatever? And don't put something on there that you know you can't sustain. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to join the gym for 30 days. Like, you're kind of failing yourself if you're like, I'm going to join the gym 30 days, then I'm going to quit and never work out again. Like, you know, once my 6-month contract is up, I'm going to cancel because I reached the pinnacle of fitness in my life, and this is the best I'll ever get, and I'm done. Like, you know, you don't really enter it that way. You enter it with like this, okay, what am I going to learn? What am I going to do to set myself up? But if it's in your head, probably not going to reach it. If you write down your goals, 20% more likely to reach it. Find a buddy. Find them today. So find you a nice accountability buddy. Whether I would say me, but then I feel like I'm gonna have 10 accountability buddies, and that's not gonna work. So find somebody, and it doesn't. You don't have to say I have the same goal. Just maybe you want to. There's Starbucks right next to our gym now. Maybe you want to meet there for a cup of coffee. Maybe you want to start like a Facebook group, or you want to do whatever. But you have to have somebody to talk to that's going through the same quote unquote struggle as you are. Somebody that's going through those carb cravings. Somebody that might have the same goal. Maybe it's somebody that also lives in a household where you come home and your spouse doesn't care and they're eating ice cream every day. It's hard to deal with that on your own. You're going to have to talk to somebody about that and push through that. Maybe you feel all this external pressure from whatever, like you're, I don't know, whatever the reason is. I'm trying to come up with stuff, but whatever the reason is, find somebody like-minded or that's going through the same quote-unquote struggle that has the same goals as you to communicate with. Because a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people, for whatever reason, I mean, I know we're busy, but we are here to train you, and that's what we're for. And a lot of people feel like they can't come talk to me or David or Megan because they think we're busy. And that's not, yeah, we're always going to be busy. I mean, but you can come talk to us. But a lot of times that doesn't happen because people feel whatever. So you need to have somebody that you can come talk to. And you need to have somebody that you can convey all this stuff with and talk to them. Not that it has to be like a psychiatry session every time that you meet, but there has to be that outlet of somebody that you can go to because it's going to be a big lifestyle change in a positive way of everything that you want to do. And then there needs to be picking a performance goal. So I put a line down there as well. So what do you want to do within the, I'd set a long-term one, but within the 30 days, what do you want to do? You want to get your first push-up or do you want to overhead squat your body weight? Like something that you can do in 30 days. Don't, if you're running a 10-minute mile, don't put that you want to put a 6-minute mile on there, or we're going to put you on the same billboard as that person that loses 50 pounds, and we're going to start selling this thing all across the country. Because there's no way that that's going to happen. I mean, even if you're already fit, shaving 4 minutes off your mile time in a month is insane. So pick something that you want to do. I don't care if it's just you want to just get up on the rings and hold yourself there. That's all you want to do, because right now you're all over the place. If you want to do a dip, if you want to do a toe to bar, whatever that is, just pick something out and chase that and dial your performance in to reach that. And set a long-term one. I mean, I have some crazy long-term goals that who knows if they're ever going to happen, but there's short goals along the way to make that happen. But just to recap a little bit, hopefully in the beginning, we kind of conveyed the concept about, unfortunately, everything that you thought you knew was wrong. And then we talked about how to manage your hormones. And then we talked about the hormones that we're going to manage. And again, this is not like we meet today and I don't ever talk to you again. We're going to try to give you guys some more information. We sent you some meal plans. We sent you a grocery shopping list and everything to get you started. And if you didn't get it, I can send it back to you. And then we went over the deal breakers, which is really just about goal setting. But as far as questions go, what questions do you guys have for me? Or what are some struggles? And if I can't answer it, then I can send it back to you in an email. I can recap all this in email.
Have you thought about giving example meals?
Yeah, so we sent, and I don't, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I sent out two-week meal plans of ideas and a grocery shopping list. Go check out the YouTube link that I sent out. It's called Constantly Varied Kitchen. Every video is under like 7 minutes long. And it's easy stuff that you can make at home. As far as the meal plans go, look, some people love them, some people hate them. Open them, check them out. If you don't like it, let me know. But yeah, Healthy Living How To is really good. She has stepped away. She's not writing as much anymore. So I don't know how frequent her posts are going to be. Yeah, the website was sent out to you guys. So if you open that email that I sent, it go down to the bottom and it's got like five websites and like 5 cookbooks. Healthy Living How To is really, really good.
Simple, they're not like extravagant.
Yeah, it's simple. And her husband, just to give you some validity behind the information, her husband, longtime colleague of mine, great guy, he was the vice president of Thorne, who's that pharmaceutical grade supplement company that we carry as well. Super good guy. I mean, that's like a great nutrition family. And they actually just came out with a movie called Fed Up, and it's really good.
What about artificial sweeteners?
What about him?
I mean, do they count? I mean, how do they get dealt with in insulin and all that stuff?
So here's the deal. This gets really weird because I'm about to blow your mind. Sugar has no calories. What? So carbs, fat, protein, and alcohol, there's only 4 things that have calories. So like a tablespoon of sugar is 0 calories. It's what it does to your insulin and all that, like you were talking about. The goal is to go natural, like a stevia or Truvia or something like that. That's going to be in like most of your really clean products. The less you can use of it, the better, because it's still a sugar. It's going a little deeper than your question, but let's say, like everybody argues high fructose corn syrup, right? High fructose corn syrup is just a molecular change of fructose and glucose. So 1 gram of sugar is 50% glucose and 50% sucrose. All I got to do is go to a lab and change how many molecules are in there, and I can make it sweeter or less sweet. And if I make it more sweet, it's called high fructose corn syrup. So what that means is that if I put high fructose corn syrup in a Snickers, it might be different amounts in the chain of the molecule, but it's the same amount of sugar or same type of sugar that's in a banana. So the sugar is not any different. Stevia, Truvia, all that, it might not contain as much and spike your insulin very high, but it still has the same effects on your body. I'm not saying that 2 Splenda in your tea is like eating a king-size Snickers, but what I'm saying is that your body can't tell the difference in it, and it's all the same type of sugar, just changed in its molecular bond.
What about honey instead?
So again, hunt and gather. You could hunt and gather honey. A couple hundred years ago, when all these studies were starting to come out, the honey was treated as like a treat. So if you were in like an Indian tribe, and I know this is getting real weird, but if you were like an Indian tribe, you could every now and then come across a beehive that allowed you to get some honey from it. So in moderation and minimal amount. It actually does not have a very high, it has basically 0 effect on your blood sugar. It's right over lactose, and it has a very minimal amount of spike on your insulin. So if you had to have sugar, that would be your best, but you're looking at like 1 tablespoon every couple days or week, not 12 cups of tea every day.
Because I used honey in my tea this morning for the first time, and I was like, this is doable.
It's doable.
Yeah,
It's
it's better than the rock candy from Savannah or whatever the tea shop is. You know, the rock candy that I used to put in.
I don't know what that is, but
It's pure rock.
It's like
It's sugar rock.
oh, gotcha,
So,
yeah.
that's what I used to have, so I stopped drinking it when I started doing paleo, and then I thought, well, why not use honey? And I used it this morning, and it tastes about the same.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be probably one of your better bets.
Yeah, so it's doable.
Cool.
Just saying, throwing it out there.
What about like sauces on meals? Like I'm all about vegetables,
Yeah.
but I like to add pasta sauce or something like that to it to make it more.
So again, what we don't want to do is overstress you, because to eat clean, most people recommend like 5 to 10 ingredients or less. So you flip over your food and you're like 5 and 10 ingredients or less. But whenever you're doing something to season something up, there's a lot of ingredients in something, and you kind of got to scan. You're like, I don't really know what that means and all that stuff. So the deal with sauces, you can let a lot slide, but number 1, really make sure you limit how many things are in the sauce that you can't pronounce. So if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be eating it. And then the biggest thing to look out for, and this is going to be hard, is try to find a sauce without soy. Soy is the number 1 elevator of breast, prostate, and colon cancer, and it actually helps you store a lot more fat in your triceps, love handles, and subscapula, so back here. And that hormone elevates your body's ability to store fat in all these areas, so you can get really skinny, but then there's a bunch of fat here, so we're trying to eliminate that. So, but other than that, I mean, yeah.
Like a pasta sauce, like, if you needed a sauce, like an organic pasta sauce, that would be helpful, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. You told us I learned from you a long time ago, if it has 10 ingredients or less, you
Yeah.
try to stay under that. And if you can't understand what it is in there, then you shouldn't eat it. But if it's 10 or less.
That's usually a good rule. And usually like with sweeteners or with like a salad dressing, they have to put so much stuff in it to make it like taste good. It's hard to stick to that, but you usually see a lot of soy, and if you can take that soy out, then it's usually going to take a lot of the other ingredients out as well. And as long as we're talking about organic and stuff, totally for organic, like go to town on it, but don't let that rule your life. You can get a lot of organic stuff, like a lot of people get like Ezekiel bread, or they get like gluten-free stuff. Some gluten-free products, or actually most gluten-free products, contain more carbohydrates than non-gluten-free products. And just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean that it's grain-free, or doesn't mean that it's sugar-free. You can eat gluten-free all day long and still not lose a pound. That just takes away the gluten is horrible in my opinion, and you should stay away from it. But that just takes away the inflammation. It takes away the digestive issues. It takes away like the swelling in your knees and ankles and stuff like that. And it usually, I mean, we see people lose like 10 pounds right off the bat when they get off gluten. But I'm not saying that gluten-free is not calorie-free. I had to have that conversation with somebody the other day. They were like, "What is gluten-free bread?" And I'm like, "It's still bread. Like it's still having 7 sandwiches."
Gluten-free has a lot of soy stuff in it too.
Yeah.
You have to watch that too.
Yeah.
Store gluten-free stuff. Like if you go to the store and you see gluten-free, a lot of that packaged stuff has soy in it. So you have to watch that too.
What about protein powder for shakes? Is Thorn going to be the best?
Yeah, so really, here's the deal. So we carry Progenics and we carry Thorn. You know, of course we're going to recommend our stuff, but I get some people want to go out on their own. As long as it's GMP certified, which is good manufacturing product, then we're good. Where you're going to get that, I don't know, because it usually has to be carried through somebody that has the credentials in order to do that. So, I mean, if you can go find where they are, tell me, because as far as I know, we're the only people that got it, but whatever.
But as far as like raising insulin and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, yeah, your protein, especially the shakes and the powders, because they get absorbed so quick, is going to have zero effect on your insulin. Just enough to manage the blood sugar. You get no spike. There's no sugar content from it. Now, if you can get some protein that has like pre-workout stuff in it, or it has some sugar and high amount. Like the protein we carry only has like 3 or 4 grams of carbs. You can get some that are like mass gainers, like 20 grams of carbs. They have sugars in it. As long as you're on that topic, look. If I could pick an ingredient for you to look out for, it would be maltodextrin. To answer your question, the protein we carry is fine. It's not going to do anything. Progenics or Thorn, neither of them.
Yeah, what's going to be the best that's like dairy-free, soy-free, all that stuff?
If you want, all right, Progenics is going to be all dairy-based, except for the recovery. Its protein comes from salmon, so it's a salmon-based protein. The Thorn Vegan Max is what doesn't have anything in it. Like if you got food allergies, whatever. I mean, none of them contain gluten, none of them contain wheat or anything like that. But the Thorn is going to be your best bet for if I want dairy-free, soy-free. It's a rice and yellow pea-based protein. All that's going to be in there. Yeah. But no, there's not. I don't know why I said that, and I'm on video. So yeah, there's no soy in that. So maltodextrin gets hidden a lot. I mean, we can talk about chemicals all day long, but if I had to pick a couple ingredients for you to look out for. So here's the deal. Everything's measured on a sugar sweetener scale, and maltodextrin is not listed as a gram of sugar. So if you flip over like a Fiber One bar, like no, I don't think Thin, but like Fiber One, a couple others, you can flip them over. There's no grams of sugar, but you'll notice there's this thing called maltodextrin in it. Maltodextrin is a higher sugar sweetener than high fructose corn syrup, but the FDA doesn't recognize it as a gram of sugar. So I can put as much of it as I want in there, and I can sell you a low calorie, 0 calorie, no sugar food, but there's maltodextrin in there, which elevates insulin really high. Now, all that stuff, like high fructose corn syrup, maltodextrin, all that, goes out the window and is actually really good for you if you're an endurance-based athlete. It actually helps you metabolize carbohydrates more in your liver for Ironman, for a marathon. That's why they drink Coke and all that stuff. But if you're not doing that and you want to lose weight, that's not really going to help you, especially if you're eating a weight loss product to try to elevate performance, but then you're eating maltodextrin, your sugar goes up like crazy. So I would pick that as an ingredient to look out for.
Protein bars.
Yeah.
There's so many out there.
Yep.
I mean, you turn it over and you're looking like, oh my God, it's like a billion carbohydrates with a bunch of sugar. Which one do you recommend as far as the best balance of it all?
To speak to a group and say this protein bar will most likely work for anybody, Perfect Foods Bar, but they actually just changed their name to Perfect Bar. Don't look at it as a protein bar because I think there's only like 10 or 15 grams of protein in there, which is, I mean, that's typical. You're not getting a protein bar that has 20 or 30 grams of protein unless it's packed full of junk. But just about every other bar it's like all right, but most of them are based with soy-based proteins because that's really cheap. But Perfect Foods Bar is available at Whole Foods. If you buy a box, they'll give you 10% off. Costco just got them in the refrigerated section. I didn't think that was them, but they just changed their name to Perfect Bar. And without even knowing really anything about you, there's no junk in it, and it's pretty simple.
Just have to refrigerate
Okay.
Yeah.
It does have to be refrigerated?
It does.
Okay.
But I mean, you can take it with you all day. Like, you can have it as, I have people take that like on the road with them if they travel and they're just snacking on it throughout the day. Just keep it in your freezer or your refrigerator like overnight and stuff.
Okay.
Anything else? We got like 3 minutes left because we got to go do some more construction at the box.
Oh, what about that whole thing about like how many grams of protein you're supposed to have a day with your body weight and how many ounces of water you're supposed to drink? Is any of that?
Yeah, well, I would definitely measure your water. So without giving you too much stress, because I don't want to send you home with all these numbers and stuff. At minimum, you need half your body weight in ounces of water per day, plus an additional 16 to 24 ounces for every hour that you exercise. That will make you feel fantastic, help you balance your hormones, keep you more hydrated and your brain feeling good. But yeah, your skin looks better. What I would suggest doing is drinking half your body weight in ounces of water a day, and don't count what you drink at the box. So whatever you drink at the box does not count, because you're just going to be drinking in there and that'll count. And then half your body weight throughout the day. As far as protein goes, so we can measure it all day long. If you want to get crazy and measure it, go to town. The most conservative that I have ever seen it is from Rob Wolf, who's a biochemist that wrote the Paleo Solution, at 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Most people are going to recommend a 1-to-1 or a 1.5-to-1. So 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight based on activity. You can also break it down to lean muscle mass, but that's usually the easiest way to do it is gram for gram. So you weigh 180 pounds, times that by 0.7, divide that by 5. And that's how many you would want in every meal. It's usually going to come in between 20 to 30 grams of protein every time you eat. Your body's going to, you're pretty safe with the activity you do to take in 35 grams of protein, because your body can only use about 25 grams at one time, but it can only metabolize a percentage of it. So if you take in 35, it'll most likely use 25. You take in 25, it's most likely only going to use 20. So you can overeat a little bit to make sure that you get that amount. But that is a great way to speed up your metabolism and help you build a lot of muscle mass and keep you full. But it's just a lot of food, but it works. It's good. So anywhere between 0.7 and 1.5. Bodybuilders usually do 2. But you're not, I'm just giving you ratios. That would be insane.
How good is sushi for you?
Sushi is a great cheat meal. Like, it's not, like, there's no long-term effects of sushi. Like, to give you an example, when we talk about like gluten and grains and all that stays in your digestive system for about 6 weeks, and the effects of it last about 6 weeks. You know, sushi, you're getting a bunch of carbohydrates, you're getting a bunch of rice, who knows what you're dipping it in and all that stuff. That's in and out of your system in like 48, 72 hours. So if you say, you know what, I did really good this week, maybe I want to go out, it's date night, whatever, and I want to take in some sushi, go right ahead. I mean, if you're going to eat it every day, it's a different conversation, but it's that or like a chili or bean-based meal. Those are great options to kind of, maybe you had a really hard workout day and you want to refuel with it, or a cheat option, that's going to be good. Way better than pizza, because that'll stay with you a long time.
And doesn't Papa John's have like a big foods and stuff? We're talking about where it makes you want to come back and eat it more. We were talking about that.
Oh,
It's called cocaine. That's
Yeah.
I don't know about Papa John's, but I know that what is it? Dasani has fluoride in it, and like all Coke products have fluoride in it because it makes you salivate more when you think about the product, and it makes you crave it a little bit more.
What about like beans and stuff?
So a bean is a legume, which means that it breaks down into an estrogen inside your body. The estrogen does the same thing soy does. It helps you store a bunch of fat here, here, and here. So we know that. Again, I'm really trying to convey concepts and get science across to you. I'm not trying to like preach some philosophy that's my opinion. Like straight up, I can measure it. Boom, you're gonna store fat here, here, and here. So like I said with Jake, like about the sushi, if you want to have your cheat meal, like, you know, you do 2 weeks really good, maybe, who knows, man, like we sent out that email about yoga or whatever, maybe next Saturday you come and you do the WOD and you take yoga, and then it's just, you're crazy all day, and at the end of the day you're exhausted and you want some calories, you need some food, and you just want to go off the bandwagon. Beans would be a better meal to cheat on because it's not going to stay in your system very long. That stuff will be in and out of your system in 48 hours, where, like I said, if you cheat on grains or whatever, it's going to be 6 weeks in there.
Any kind of bean? I mean, is there one bean?
They're basically all the same. Yeah. That and peanuts too. Peanuts are a legume. So when we say like nuts and seeds, you want to exit peanuts and cashews. But everything else, almonds, walnuts, pistachios, you're all good.
What about green beans?
Here's the deal with that. All right, that's a really good question. A lot of people bring up green beans and all that. Here is as a coach, this is my philosophy on it. That at some degree, we have to like manage what you're doing. And if the client comes to me and says, man, look, here's the deal. I have cut out grains, sugars. Is this okay? Like, I'm good to go. Still eating those green beans. I'm going to be thrilled. I'm going to be like, great, that's awesome. Cool, eat those green beans. I'm not going to go, man, you're like really slacking and eating those green beans, because who knows, that might be that one thing, one vegetable the person likes, and it raises your estrogen a mild amount, but not nearly as much as the effects of grains and sugars and all that. So you kind of got to pick and choose your battles. And if we're spending all this time talking about how you can't eat green beans when you were eating pizza twice a week and you're no longer doing that, let's celebrate that a lot more. And hey, if the time comes where you hit a plateau and maybe that's the one thing we need to change, then let's talk about it. But right now, I need you eating vegetables and a lot of them. And if you eat some green beans, it's cool.
So you can eat like natural almond butter, like from Whole Foods. But
Yeah.
not peanut butter.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend peanut butter because that peanut is a legume. But almond butter, go to town. Yeah.
If it doesn't have sugar in it.
Yeah, you can actually, 94 almonds, you can put them in a compressor, spin them up, and make your own almond butter. That's all it takes, because there's oils inside of it, and it releases the oils. I mean, I don't know if you got like an hour to do that, but
Ninja.
but yeah.
What about if I really need some chocolate and I found this Good Life that's soy-free, nut-free, dairy-free?
Yeah.
Is that alright every now and then? Maybe once a day or?
Once a day?
It's a really small square. That's what she told me. It's a really small square.
Or some
You need a greater than 3-day gap on your cheat meals. Because if we're craving it every day, that tells me that most likely your cortisol and stressor hormones are really high, and we're feeding them rather than managing that.
Alright. Every 3 days.
Like every 4.
So did you have
Tell her a
some
week,
kind
Mitchell.
of-
Tell her a week.
I'm out. But you told me every 4 days.
A chocolate bar will last long.
I did. That could be
There's like
4
4
little,
balls.
like a Hershey, 4 little nuggets in a bar. But alright, once every 4 days.
Write that down.
She had like a reminder in her phone.
Doesn't it depend on like the level, like the percentage of the bean from cocoa?
What?
The cacao?
Yeah.
60%
Like
or
they want
higher.
60% or higher. Because it's actually beneficial for you.
See, it's a benefit.
Yeah, but it's just like the same thing with wine.
Chocolate except for this.
It's not good for you.
That's-
There's less sugar in it too, the higher,
Yeah, the higher the percentage is.
the less the sugar.
All right, just eat chocolate once every 4 days. Whatever works.
Not Hershey's
Yeah.
chocolate.
Yeah, you can get it from Whole Foods. They come in a bar and it's like, you get them like 80%.
As long as we're talking about that too, feel free to think, like, we debunked a lot of the myths up top, and we talked about like common things that people hear. Really try to like dive into like what you think is healthy. I'm not trying to say that everything out there is wrong and the government's out to kill you or whatever, but we talk about antioxidants, like that was mentioned. A lot of people say, well, I got to eat my banana for potassium, and we talk about there's 30 grams of sugar in a banana. There's 100 milligrams of potassium in a banana. There are 750 milligrams of potassium in an avocado. A lot of people want to argue antioxidants. Yeah, there's antioxidants in a blueberry, but there's actually more antioxidants in a kidney bean than there are in a blueberry. And I'm not telling you to eat a bunch of blueberries, I'm not telling you to eat a bunch of kidney beans. What I am saying is that just because we hear everything causes and prevents cancer, and everything makes you lose weight or gain weight. Like, think of all the stuff that goes around. You hear everything might help you lose this, might help you lose that. I mean, I know we're going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I don't know if you guys saw Dr. Oz got sat down in front of the Senate and grilled out because they felt like he was compromising the integrity of his show by everything that he said was the latest and greatest whatever. They pulled up all these documents or clips of him saying this is the new solution to weight loss and this is the whatever. And the argument they made was you're giving these people hope, and you're giving them so much hope off something that has no study or backing, or it might have like a less than 5% chance of helping them lose weight. So just because you hear everything, try to do like a little backstory on it and say, you know what, I heard that's healthy for me. Oh man, I can get 7.5 times more potassium from an avocado than a banana. Oh, I'm glad I know that now because there's no sugar in an avocado and there's a bunch of healthy fat. There's potassium, magnesium, there's all this stuff in it. Rather than just say, I got to eat a banana every day, and you're actually getting 1/7 of what you could. And a lot of that stuff is really powerful. Like Dr. Oz, I can't say a bunch of names because I'm being filmed right now. But Dr. Oz said something about, like, this is how, it's not about Dr. Oz, like, this whole presentation or anything, but he said one thing about an artificial sugar, and this is how powerful the marketing is in the scheme of weight loss. He said one thing about an artificial sugar, and when he said that, the former company that I used to work for, which is a $1 billion company and really big, carried this line of proteins and meal replacements, all that stuff, and it was carrying that sugar, all right? And it's a very natural, didn't raise your insulin, it was really good. Now, you know, Dr. Oz is actually talking about something good, and it only came from a small island in the Bahamas. His show came out on Thursday. Monday morning, the company I was working for got a phone call and said that they had to completely change their line of everything that they made and the products and the distribution rate of how it was made, because that little old place in the Bahamas or whatever is no longer supplying sugar to small businesses. It only goes to big food companies now, because what he said took off so much in 48 hours that it globally changed the rate of how they got their sugar. I know that's like a weak explanation because I don't really know it that well, but I do know that they had to change everything in the products in there just because some dude said that it might help you lose weight. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not some stupid question, but like, okay, you're talking about potatoes. Can we eat French fries with sea salt? No, I mean, do fried.
Can you hunt and gather fried French fries? There you go. That's how you always want to think about it.
Preparation, if we can't.
Yep.
When it's totally prepared.
Yeah.
Hunt and gather it.
But
Then
what if
But
you
you
at
can't
home
hunt
spiralize them or shred them down the potato and bake them in the oven?
Yeah, that's fine.
So there you go.
Because we're just talking about heat at that point. We're not changing what it's done. Like, we're not frying
Put
apples.
a little coconut oil, some Himalayan pink salt, sea salt, and put them in the oven.
Yeah, like we make sweet potato fries and stuff like that, because all you're really doing is you're just heating it up. You're not really adding anything to it. You can totally do that.
Just don't get them at
Yeah.
Yeah, don't go
Not the
okay.
What about eggs? How many times a week would you imagine eating eggs?
I
A day?
have like 6 a day.
A day.
Go to town. It will not affect your cholesterol
Thank
at
you.
all.
Somebody was like said that to me, like, well, aren't you worried about your cholesterol? I'm like, not really. And then I thought maybe I should be, so I thought I'd ask you.
No, I'll address this, and then right after this, we got to go. We're actually putting the rig up today. And then if you have any questions, shoot me an email, and I'll get them to you. So it won't affect your cholesterol because you have blood cholesterol and you have serum cholesterol. And just because you eat cholesterol, it will not affect your cholesterol. That was actually debunked in the 1940s by this guy named John Yudkin. There was a big study called the 7 Countries, so if you want to go look that up and do that. But basically, it won't elevate your cholesterol because it doesn't have a vessel, and your body makes cholesterol. And by vessel, I mean carbohydrates. Eggs will not elevate your cholesterol. The bagel that you eat the eggs with will elevate your cholesterol. Your body has to have cholesterol, and it gets all these bad raps of like HDL and LDL. And how it works is, if here's your arteries, all right, every time you work out, every time you get stressed, every time you do whatever, there's all these cracks that go through the arteries. And it's basically like if you're driving down the road, somebody throws a rock at your windshield and it spiders out like that. You guys with me? So that's like kind of what your veins will look like. Well, your brain goes, or your body and your brain go, oh man, there's all this stress in the arteries. Let me send LDL, which is low density lipoprotein, out to the bloodstream to fix that. And then it sits on all those cracks. And they're like construction workers. They fix all those cracks. That is made from carbohydrates and sugar. So LDL, low density lipoprotein, is made from carbohydrates and sugar. And it sits on there. And HDL, which is high density lipoprotein, is made from fat. And HDL goes through the bloodstream, basically acts as like a bus, picks up all the construction workers and drives off. And that's how it does it. It fixes it, drives off, fixes it, drives off, so on and so forth. What happens with the standard American diet and why it gets a lot of rap is you eat a lot of cholesterol. So you're putting cholesterol in your body, plus your liver is making cholesterol. So you have all this excess cholesterol. And it's sending out all that LDL cholesterol to fix all the cracks over and over and over again. But you keep eating carbs and sugar. So all the cholesterol that your body's making, it's only making LDL because you're only eating carbs and sugar. So it keeps stacking on top of there. And that's where you get atherosclerosis, because you don't have any HDL because you're not eating any fat to come and take that cholesterol away. Again, your body makes cholesterol. It wouldn't make something that killed itself. But that's how it works. You're building up an abundance of the low-density lipoprotein, along with other things. If you go research this, you'll see things like VLDL or ILDL and all this stuff. Basically, the sugar just makes all the bad cholesterol, quote-unquote bad cholesterol, and it sticks on there. And because the average American isn't eating a bunch of fat, it can't take away that cholesterol. Cool? If you guys got any questions, shoot them to us.